Ladies and gentlemen, look at the schedule. The moment of truth hasn't just arrived. It is standing right in front of us, and as of this weekend, we have officially reached the point of no return. The narrative for the opening week of Wimbledon has come and gone. It is in the wind. It is history. And what we are left with in the aftermath of these first two rounds is not a predictable storyline. It is not a traditional underdog tale, and it certainly isn't a fluke. What we are left with is the deafening sound of a collision between a historic level of dominance and a challenger who has absolutely refused to buy into the illusion of fear. We need to have a very serious, very uncomfortable conversation about what is about to happen in this third round matchup, because the tennis propaganda machine is spinning so fast, it is about to come off its axis. The sports world is looking at Iga Swiatek, they are looking at the defending champion, and they are writing off anyone who stands across the net. But if you actually sit down and listen to the words coming out of the mouth of her challenger, if you strip away the media noise and the sympathetic nodding of the press conference reporters, you will find a level of competitive and tactical literacy that is frankly terrifying for anyone who thinks this match is a foregone conclusion. I cannot believe what I am hearing. I watched the press conference, I read the transcripts, and I found myself shaking my head in disbelief because it confirms everything we have suspected for days. This challenger understands exactly the terrifying business she is in. We have to start with the realization that is going to define this entire tactical showdown. It is a concept that should be studied in sports psychology seminars as a prime example of how to misunderstand game planning. The challenger looked into the microphones and admitted something that most players are utterly terrified to say out loud. She said that she has spent 2 days studying Swiatek, sitting in a dark room with her team, grinding through the footage, and the normal process simply is not producing the normal output. She said with a straight face that she cannot find a weakness to target. Let that sink in. Let it marinate. I cannot find a weakness to target.
Iga Swiatek is the most dangerous player I have ever had to prepare for, and I am not saying that to generate headlines or to seem humble in front of a press conference. I am saying it because it is the most accurate description I have of what I am walking into, and I think being inaccurate about it would cost me something I cannot afford to lose right now.
On the surface, it sounds like a concession. It sounds like a white flag moment. But when you peel back the layers, it exposes a fundamental disconnect that threatens to ruin every other player who steps on the court with Swiatek. Other players look at the defending champion, they see the trophies, the streak, the aura, and they try to draw a straight line from traditional tennis strategy to Swiatek's game. And they say essentially, every player has a flaw, therefore I just need to find it and attack it, regardless of whether that flaw is actually exploitable under pressure. This is the vulnerability fallacy. It is the belief that because you are looking for a weakness, one must magically exist. Let's be crystal clear about something right now. Iga Swiatek did not build her empire by leaving the doors unlocked. She hasn't avoided losing a Grand Slam match in the third round or beyond in over 2 years because people forgot to attack her weaknesses. Normal opponents, even very good opponents, have a tell. They have a pattern they rely on entirely too heavily when the oxygen gets thin and the pressure spikes. They have a surface in their game where the quality drops slightly when the margins are razor thin. They have a specific point construction that makes them uncomfortable. But Swiatek, when you put her under the microscope, every direction you look for a reliable, repeatable vulnerability, you just find a mirage. You find something that might look like a weakness from 50 feet away, but on closer inspection, it is simply a slightly less dominant area within an overall package that does not have a true weak link. To equate a slightly less dominant shot with a functional weakness is not just disingenuous, it is dangerous. It tells the fans, and it tells the rest of the locker room, that there is a secret vault of unforced errors, Scrooge McDuck style, somewhere in Swiatek's game that she is just refusing to open. That vault does not exist. The pockets of Swiatek's vulnerability are empty. The fact that other players break down under pressure is completely irrelevant to the mechanics of this specific matchup. You simply cannot demand a weakness from a player who doesn't have one. That is like playing chess against a supercomputer, seeing it make a slightly less aggressive move and demanding a checkmate because it must be breaking down. It defies the laws of competitive reality. Other players want a shortcut. They want a comfortable match preparation that produces a game plan that feels like a key cut for a specific lock, where they can walk onto the court knowing exactly which doors they are going to open. But preparing for Swiatek doesn't give you a key. It gives you a general philosophy about how to survive at the highest possible level for as many consecutive minutes as humanly possible, and you just have to hope that philosophy is enough to generate the moments that decide the match. The moment you treat Swiatek like a puzzle with a missing piece, you lose the leverage to actually compete against the pieces that are firmly on the board. This mindset of trying to find the missing piece is getting worse by the day across the tour, and the irony is, while the rest of the tennis world is making these vulnerability fallacy comparisons, they are completely overlooking the one player who actually understands the stakes. Let's talk about the journey to get here, because it is the sun around which this entire third-round solar system revolves, whether the traditionalists want to admit it or not. When the tournament started, this challenger came in just wanting to see how far her grass court improvements could take her. And then the first round happened. Listen to what she said about beating Ranatata. Contrast her tone with the tone of players who act like they are just happy to be there. She didn't just casually mention it, she framed it as a massive, career-altering milestone. It was her first Wimbledon main draw win, the first time she had ever navigated past the opening round at this specific, hallowed tournament. And it happened on a day when the Filipino crowd in the stands turned Southwest London into a home game. She felt the genuine, undeniable sensation of a home crowd behind her at a Grand Slam for the first time in her professional life. That is the voice of someone whose baseline of reality is shifting in real-time. But then came the second round against Maya, and this is where the story goes from a feel-good narrative to an absolute masterclass in psychological warfare. Think about the surreal nature of this setup. Maya had literally just beaten Serena Williams hours earlier. Serena Williams, the icon, the player who shaped our challenger's entire understanding of what is possible in this sport, whose very presence gave her permission to believe that her own greatness was worth building. Serena came back after years away, walked onto these courts, competed, and lost to Maya. And now our challenger is sitting in the changeover chair, down a set. To the woman who just ended Serena's highly anticipated return. Most players crack right there. Most players look at the scoreboard, they look at the opponent who just slayed the dragon, and they let the bizarre, surreal gravity of the situation swallow them whole. They sit in that chair and try to figure out what they did wrong, but she didn't panic. What she did in that chair is the exact reason she is a lethal threat to Swiatek. She shifted. She made a mental pivot from analysis to intention. It sounds like a small thing, right? Shift from analysis to intention. It sounds like a clever soundbite. But inside the cauldron of a Grand Slam match, under those specific suffocating conditions, it was the literal difference between letting Maya dictate the terms of engagement and deciding to hijack the match entirely. She stopped torturing herself over the first set's problems and focused entirely on what she was actually capable of doing in the second. And the result? She dismantled her 6-2, 6-0. Do you hear the disconnect when people call her an underdog? The 6-2, 6-0 wasn't her playing better tennis than Maya was capable of defending. It was her playing her tennis rather than a watered-down version of her game shaped by the opponent. She refused to negotiate. And that brings us to the crux of the Swiatek problem, the tactical negotiation. This is the hill the rest of the tour seems willing to die on, and it is a hill made of quicksand. Notice I said negotiating with Swiatek, not playing her. There is a massive difference, and the players seem to be intentionally ignoring it. Against most opponents, your game plan and their game plan exist in a negotiation. You are both trying to impose your preferences on the point construction, and whoever wins that argument wins the points. But against Swiatek, the negotiation does not work, because she is better at the negotiation than almost any human being breathing on the tour right now. When you try to negotiate a point with Swiatek, you are demanding to win the rally on her terms. You are telling the defending champion, I don't care if you have the best defensive to offensive conversion rate in the sport, I am going to try to outmaneuver you. That is not a winning model. That is a ransom note to your own stamina. Swiatek's ability to redirect a point that is developing in her opponent's favor, to instantly change the shape of a rally when it is going wrong for her, is exactly what makes her the most dangerous player in the world. She finds a defensive solution in one exchange and instantly weaponizes it into an offensive platform in the next dot. If you walk into that stadium with a game plan built around Swiatek's tendencies rather than your own strengths, you are already a ghost. By the time you try to execute that plan, she will have already adjusted away from the tendencies you targeted. She will counter your counter before you even know what hit you. So what is the solution? What happens when the math doesn't match? You don't negotiate at all. You don't play passive. You don't play without a plan, but you play so completely, so ruthlessly from your own game, your own rhythms, and your own preferences that the negotiation never even has the space to establish itself. You force her to deal with the purest possible version of your own game. And for this challenger, that weapon is the left-handed serve. Let's break down the geometry because this is where the rubber meets the road and where the analysts refuse to look. A left-handed serve creates the ultimate structural uncertainty for any right-handed opponent on the planet, and Iga Swiatek is right-handed. The wide serve into the deuce court, kicking aggressively away from a right-handed returner's backhand. Let me tell you something, structurally, that is the single most difficult ball to handle on a grass court. Why? Because the grass gives you absolutely no time. The low bounce takes away your setup, and the sharp angle compounds that time pressure in a way that turns an already uncomfortable return into an absolute unmitigated nightmare. And our challenger has been dealing absolute darts at this tournament. Her first serve percentage in the first two matches has been well above her normal average. And more importantly, the quality of contact, the sheer consistency of finding her spots, which she noticed from her very first practice session here, has carried directly over into the heat of match conditions. Now, let's be fair to the defending champion. Swiatek is one of the greatest returners on the planet, but even she has a baseline. Even Swiatek returns at a slightly lower clip on grass than she does on clay. The pace of the surface, the erratic bounce, it works against the return in ways that even elite textbook fundamentals cannot completely mask. And our challenger intends to exploit that difference aggressively, starting from the very first game of the match. But this isn't just about X's and O's. This is about the unquantifiable asymmetry that the media doesn't want to talk about. Yes, Swiatek has been here many times. She has won this tournament. She knows the conditions perfectly. But what she does not have, what her excellent preparation team and her advanced analytics cannot give her, is the specific feeling of playing against this left-handed serve on this surface in this particular week. You can watch it on a screen all day long, but you cannot feel the weight of it until you are standing on the baseline. There is a version of that asymmetry that works entirely in the challenger's favor. And let's have a brutally honest conversation about the mental state required to pull this off, because the psychology of this challenger is what separates contenders from pretenders. She admitted she hasn't slept particularly well the last two nights. The media might spin that as fear. They might spin that as a player crumbling before the match even begins. But that is absolute delusion. She isn't tossing and turning out of conventional anxiety. What she is experiencing is a sustained state of heightened awareness. It is a relentless competitive alertness that simply refuses to switch off between matches. She has never experienced this specific level of focus before, and instead of viewing it as a flaw in her preparation, she is choosing to interpret it as vital data. It is proof of how much this moment actually means to her. She knows the predictable emotional texture of normal tournaments. She knows what the nerves usually feel like and how to manage them, but what is happening this week is entirely different. And the difference is rooted in the foundation she has built. She has never arrived at a third-round Grand Slam match having already accomplished something this genuinely profound in the rounds prior. The ground beneath her feet is solid. It is more solid than any foundation she has ever competed from at this level, and it is not because she magically transformed into a different tennis player in the last 5 days. It is because she has finally done something real on this surface in this specific tournament that verifies what she previously only believed believed. There is a monumental, universe-shifting difference between believing you are capable of something and knowing you are capable of it because you have actually done it. That distinction is the single most valuable psychological resource she is bringing to the court. Swiatek knows she can win because she has an accumulated record of doing it repeatedly under the highest pressure. That record gives her a competitive baseline that most players simply cannot match. Our challenger isn't claiming she has completely closed that massive gap. That would be fantasy. What she is saying is that her own baseline has fundamentally shifted. The woman who arrived in London at the start of the week is not the same competitive proposition that is walking out for the third round. She expected to just compete well. She expected to test her grass court work. But what has actually transpired has shattered those expectations so thoroughly that she has had to continuously recalibrate her own ceiling in real time. She has had to open the door to a level of possibility that she didn't even permit herself to fully visualize until she started stacking up the wins. She belongs here. She is in the third round of Wimbledon, staring down Iga Swiatek, and she is not a story, she is not a miracle, and she is not a lucky upset waiting to happen. She is a professional tennis player who has earned her spot on that grass point by grueling point across this specific week. And to the Filipino crowd that has been the absolute wind at her back, the crowd that is going to pack those stands again, her message is clear. She hears you. She knows what you sound like when things go right, and she knows what you sound like in the dark, difficult moments. She knows exactly what you are carrying into those stands. She knows that for you, this is not just a neutral tennis match to watch passively. It is personal. And it is personal for her too. Iga Swiatek is the most dangerous player she has ever faced. Swiatek defines what the absolute ceiling of the sport looks like right now, and Iga Swiatek is also simply the next match on the schedule. Both of those statements are undeniably true, and she is going to walk onto that hallowed court holding both of those truths completely, unapologetically, and fiercely. She will not let the aura of the champion make her smaller than she actually is. The deadline for doubt has passed. The excuses are in the wind. What we are staring down is the barrel of a work stoppage on the traditional narratives. The tennis world is about to wake up and find that this challenger isn't asking for a handout, she isn't asking for a negotiation, and she isn't looking for a weakness that doesn't exist. She is bringing her purest game to the biggest stage, and she is forcing the defending champion to deal with it. I'm out. I'm telling you right now, stop underestimating this moment. Get real. Look at the geometry. Look at the serve. And for the love of the game, listen to the player who just took out the woman who ended Serena's run. She seems to be the only one who knows exactly what time it is. Tell me what you think in the comments. Does the challenger have the ultimate game plan, or is the defending champion simply too much to handle? Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, because this story isn't over. It's just getting started, and it's going to be an absolute war.